The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus dismissed the crowds and went into the house. His disciples approached him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He said in reply, "He who sows good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seed the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are angels. Just as weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all who cause others to sin and all evildoers. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of the Father. Whoever has ears ought to hear." Brothers and sisters, the Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Please remain standing. Please be seated.
Today, the Church celebrates the memorial of the grandparents of Jesus, Saints Joachim and Anne. And today is the culmination of the 3-day conference for grandparents and the elderly that began last Sunday with the World Day for Grandparents and Elderly People. In the message that I gave last Sunday at the opening of the online conference, I began by calling attention to the theme for this year's celebration. In old age, they will still bear fruit. The theme is actually inspired by Psalm 92, the psalm that describes the elderly as the just flourishing like the palm tree and growing like a Lebanon cedar, still bearing fruit in their old age, still full of sap, still green. In Tagalog, we would say, may asim pa kahit may edad na. In most modern societies, where fruitfulness is gauged in terms of material productivity, only the young will tend to be considered as assets, and the elderly will tend to be treated as liabilities. And yet we know that in most Asian cultures, we value the wisdom and the guidance of our elderly people. And whenever we can, we prefer to keep them as part of our regular family homes, rather than entrust them to the care of institutions or homes for the elderly. In Tagalog, the term for growing old is pagtanda, because we regard our elderly as signposts for travelers. They can point the way because they have been there. Sometimes they would say, "Papunta ka pa lang, iho, pauwi na ako." The gospel today has a beautiful image for the wisdom of the elderly. The capacity to sort out between the weeds and the wheat. Ito yung klase ng wisdom na pinahahalagahan natin. And the reason why we believe that keeping our young people in the close company of the elderly is a very positive thing. Dito sa atin, sa Pilipinas, umimbento pa nga tayo ng isang salita for the new ministry entrusted to grandparents or the elderly. Ang tawag nila ay apostolate. I heard this from my own brothers and sisters na karamihan, mga lolo't lola na rin. Mag-a-apostolate kami. Meaning, the care of the lolos and the lolas for their apo, kaya apostolate. For their grandchildren, which is very important especially in terms of their contribution to the nurturing of the physical, intellectual, cultural, and spiritual upbringing of their grandchildren. The online conference also featured reflections on the importance of grandparents and the elders in inculcating the Christian faith and their role in the family and society. Mas malakas daw ang tendency sa mga kabataan na mapalapit sa simbahan kapag malapit sila sa mga lolo't lola nila. If there is one thing most young parents in the Philippines are thankful for, it is usually the generosity of their elderly parents in sharing of their time, energy, and even finances. Especially when these young parents are not yet financially stable. In many instances, grandparents, mga lolo't lola, they even go to the extent of spending their own retirement money in order to help their children and their grandchildren get by. And since the young parents tend to be preoccupied with earning a living, very often in the Philippines, mga lolo't lola ang mas madalas makasama ng mga anak nila. They tend to be more present to accompany their grandchildren in their tender growing up years. In more ways than one, grandparents are actually part of the system of social security of most Filipino families. Often, they are the ones who end up with meager resources in their own moments of sickness and old age. Dahil nga, pati retirement money nila ay ginagamit nila para tulungan ang mga anak at mga apo nila. But, when challenging times like times of illness come for the grandparents, and the children and the grandchildren will be there for them, that can only mean to me that the family has been genuinely anchored on Christian values. We know, of course, that it is not always the case anymore among all families. Alam nyo, sa Singapore, ang daming mga lolo't lola na nabubuhay mag-isa sa mga high-rise apartments. Many of them are hardly able to pay the rents dahil papataas ng papataas ang standard of living, and their retirement money is just not enough to be able to cope financially. But the worst part of it is, many of them rarely get visited by their children and grandchildren. I remember the last time we visited Singapore, we were hosted by a parish. And one of the apostolates of the parish was to bring lunch to all of these elderly people who are living alone, and to send somebody to talk to them, to be with them for lunch every day. What a beautiful apostolate. And so it is good that in many parishes, the elderly are organizing themselves into support groups that provide assistance to their fellow elderly people, especially for those who may not have had the good fortune of growing old in the company of loving and caring parents. Well, today is a special day for us. In the Diocese of Caloocan, we happen to be launching our Pastoral Communications Research Institute. And we're putting up this institute precisely to serve as a bridge, especially to the more neglected sectors in society and in the church. And I hope that our PCRI will make it part of the research to find out kamusta ang ating mga nakatatanda dito sa Diocese of Caloocan. The best Tagalog warning for people who do not know how to express care, respect, and love for the elderly, the best warning for them is, tatanda rin kayo.